So here we are at the cabin for our next trip, a couple days. So everything looks good. Welcome to Tiny NH House. It's mid-May and I'm up for a few days. One of the goals of this trip is to hardwire the solar system in, or finish the hardwiring, hooking up my circuit breakers and charge controller, stuff like that. So I'll take you through that. Here's a look at some of the baby ferns that are just starting to come out on my front steps. But I've been lucky, they like this whole front rock wall and they cover it with ferns, which is really nice. I actually got smart this time and I dug out an old milk crate that I had in the cellar, and I'm using that to bring my fresh water in. Well, I got everything in. I'm finding that these canvas bags are really helpful to pack odds and ends in. The one on the right there, my daughter bought me for my birthday, and the one on the left I found down in our cellar, so I confiscated it. Nobody was using it. I don't know if I'm going to need that down coat tonight. I think the temperatures are going to be in the upper 40s, so this place should hold the heat. I'm not planning on having a fire tonight if I don't have to. May get some rain on Monday. If it's cool, I'll start a fire then to get the chill off. I have to make a more permanent connection to the solar panels here, so I'm going to run a piece of conduit horizontally over to the middle, put an outlet box there, or junction box, and run the cable through that. Then I have two, I guess you'd call them pigtails, that have the connectors on them for the solar panels, and I'll run those from the connection box over to the panel. My son's coming up in a month or so. He's going to help me put the second panel up. So then I'll be cooking 530 watts. So this connection box will be beneath the panels, and the conduit will pipe into this side here, and then I'll have a strain relief from the bottom for the wires from the solar to come in there. This plastic is a lot easier to drill than the white PVC stuff. I tried drilling that a year or so ago to make a different project, and that just cracked like anything. So this it's still not easy to work with, but I was able to drill a decent hole through there. So that will work for now. Get the wires out of the elements. Here I'm securing the pigtails for the solar panels to the junction box here. I bought these number 6 wire nuts at the hardware store this morning, because this is 8 gauge, and the biggest nut I had was for 10 gauge. So yeah, those are big nuts. Next job is to run the wires and conduit from the basement into the battery box. So this is my battery box you've seen before. I may have gone a little big, but that's fine. Initially I'd planned to put the charge controller outside, but then I thought it would be better to put it in the cellar along with the pure sine wave inverter. But that just means there's more room in the box for additional batteries. So what I'm thinking here is running this piece of conduit here out from the cellar and then into the battery box like that. And then I can adjust the box, the distance on the box from the house as I need, as long as there's no batteries in it. So that's a 1.5-inch hole, and I just happen to have an 1.5-inch hole saw. I'm going to take a few measurements inside and then start drilling. I can tell ahead of time this is going to be a fun hole to drill because I have to go through 3/4 inches of siding, then 1/2 inch of plywood sheathing, or the green stuff, and then 1.5 inches of perimeter joist. So I'm going to be digging wood out of here so I can continue my hole. Wish me luck. There's the first part. Got through the outside 3/4 inch. Actually, I'm shocked that turned out to be easy. Glad something's easy. Alright, and this will fit right in there. Have to secure it somehow and put some foam around that, expanding foam, waterproof it, pest proof it. So now I will move the box back so I can mark and drill a hole for the other end of this. This is what it looks like connected up, the conduit. No wires in it yet. And it comes out inside the battery box here. So it should work. Eventually I'm going to cover the top of this with some extra roofing metal that's in this basement, but I have to get a saw blade that'll cut metal first. Doing some planning for my electrical board here. The lower right, I'm going to have my circuit breakers. I've got the positive coming in from the solar panels into that already. To the left of that, I'm going to put the charge controller, and then at the top I'm going to put the pure sine wave inverter and a cutoff switch. I figure I'll put that at the top because it'd be closer to the batteries, so I'll minimize the length of the wires, heavy duty wires that'll go from the batteries to the inverter. I changed my mind, so I'm putting the circuit breakers on the left hand bottom and the charge controller on the right bottom. I've got 2 of my circuit breakers connected to the solar panel and the charge controller, and the other circuit breaker goes to the battery. I got 1 more negative wire to connect that will go to the battery. Working with this 8-gauge wire is hard on the hands and forearms. Also, my wire stripper only goes down to 12 gauge, I believe, wire. So these are DC circuit breakers, and the one thing to remember when doing this is that they have a polarity to them. The positive needs to come in one side, and if you take a close look at the circuit breaker at the bottom, I don't know if this will come out here, it's marked positive. So that is where you want your highest voltage to enter the circuit breaker. So in this case, this is my line coming in from the solar panel, positive line. So it's going into the positive side of this breaker, and then it's coming out and going into the charge controller. Because the voltage coming out of my panel right now is about 30 volts, and when I get the other panel up, that'll be around 60 volts DC coming in. So that's a higher, obviously, potential. So that should come into the positive end. This other breaker goes to the battery, and on the battery, even though it's set up for right now 12 volt battery, eventually I'm going to change the configuration to 24 volts. You want the positive side of the battery to come into the positive side of this DC breaker, and then from there it feeds over to the charge controller. And the reason they do that is if something goes wrong and the charge controller shorts out, the massive amount of current is coming from the battery. So that's essentially at a higher potential than the charge controller. Even though when the charge controller is working properly and it's a sunny day, it may be putting 14 volts into the battery. So that might seem counterintuitive, but I checked with the tech people and those were the instructions. Here's a view with the cover on the circuit breaker box. Everything's hooked up. So it's time to connect the battery and give it a try. It's time to move my 4 golf cart batteries outside into the battery box. They've been taking up too much floor space here inside. Battery's all hooked up, so let's fire this thing up. Alright, so there's the circuit breaker for the battery, and here we have battery indicator, orange, needs to be charged. This is the indicator for the solar array. It's off right now. So we'll turn on the solar array. And it's hard to make out through the camera, but the solar array is green, it's on. Battery turned to green because it's starting to get charged. So everything works. One thing, when you start the solar array, you want to make sure that the charge controller is getting power from the battery first before you add the solar panels input to the charge controller. So always turn on first the circuit breaker to the batteries, which powers up the charge controller. These are smart, so they know they can read the voltage, whether it's 12 volts or 24 volts or larger, if it's a larger charge controller. So that's the reason the battery needs to be energized first. And then once you do that, you can throw the breaker for the solar panels, because then it's ready to receive the power. So I'll call that a success. Everything's working nicely. It's partly sunny today. Clouds come by once in a while, but even with the cloud, I'm getting 12.8 volts. It goes up to 14 when it's sunny. Eventually I'll get lugs for those cables to attach permanently. Last trip I cut down a widowmaker with my bow saw because I left my chainsaw at home. This trip I brought the chainsaw up and we cut up a portion of that tree. And I started stacking the pieces in my woodpile just to get them off the ground. My wheelbarrow is still at home, so I put the wood on my hand truck and get 4 or 5 pieces on there, carefully bring them up the hill, and then put them in the woodpile. I got this tree that split last fall in a big windstorm, so I got to take that down because that's not safe. Unfortunately, I didn't catch this on film, but I got the tree cut down. I mean, yeah, it's still hung up in the top, but the bottom cut worked. So next trip, I'll attach a wire to the bottom there and secure it to a tree and pull that a little bit toward the right. See if that's enough to bring it down, and I'll just keep doing that until it clears the canopy up there. I don't know if you can see it, the canopy. So this is a partial success. More work to be done. That is just about going to do it for this trip. Glad that I got the solar system hooked up finally. I went and ordered the rest of my cabinets, except for one, for the kitchen. So they should be in a week. So when I come back up here in 2 weeks, the job is going to be to remove the sink, remove that temporary plywood counter, and then put the cabinets in place, cut holes for the sink piping, start putting some preservative down on my butcher block countertop, and then cut the holes for that, and then seat the sink back. But before I can do any of that, I forgot. I have to continue the Tire Groove pine up that wall, because I had to stop because the counter's in the way. and finish. There's a little more insulation to do. And then I can put the cabinets in. So, if you enjoyed this episode, please hit the like button and subscribe. And I will see you soon. Stay safe out there.